The Zarathan Empire controlled the outer regions of space for over 300 years. No one had ever challenged their power. Their ships were made of strange crystals that shined in the darkness of space. These ships were beautiful, but they were also deadly. The Zarathans believed they were the strongest race in the galaxy, and for a long time, they were right. Commander Vexithara stood on the bridge of his flagship. The ship was called the Eternal Dominion. He looked at the screens in front of him. They showed 12,000 Zarathan ships surrounding a human planet called New Arizona. The planet was small, with only 3 million people living on its surface. Vexithara smiled. The humans would surrender soon. Everyone always surrendered to the Zarathan Empire. Far away, hidden behind a field of asteroids, Admiral Jacob Hayes sat in his command chair. He was 52 years old and had fought in more battles than he could count. His face showed the years of war. Deep lines ran across his forehead. His eyes were tired but sharp. He never missed anything. Jacob looked at the screen showing the enemy ships. There were so many of them. 12,000 vessels, all waiting around New Arizona like wolves around a cornered animal. But Jacob was not afraid. He had prepared for this moment for months. He had studied the Zarathans. He knew how they thought. He knew how they fought. Most importantly, he knew their weakness. Captain Lisa Morgan stood next to Jacob. She was his second in command. Lisa was 38 years old and had served with Jacob for 10 years. She trusted him completely. Right now, she was counting the human ships and making sure everyone was ready. "Admiral, all ships are ready," Lisa said. Her voice was calm and steady. "We have 216 capital ships, 463 frigates, and 812 support craft. Everyone is in position and waiting for your order." Jacob nodded slowly. He did not speak right away. He was thinking about the people on New Arizona. They had been trapped on their planet for 3 weeks. The Zarathans had been bombing them from space. Millions of people were hiding in underground shelters, praying for help to arrive. Jacob was going to give them that help, but not in the way the Zarathans expected. Lieutenant Paul Griffin sat at the sensor station. He was 24 years old and had just graduated from the Naval Academy 6 months ago. This was his first real battle. His hands were shaking slightly as he watched the screens. He tried to hide his fear, but everyone on the bridge could see it. No one said anything. They had all been young and scared once. "Sir, the enemy formation has not changed," Paul said. "They do not know we are here. The asteroid field is hiding our ships perfectly." Commander Karen Wells smiled at this news. She was the tactical officer, which meant she planned how the fleet would fight. Karen was 45 years old and had spent her entire adult life in the military. She was good at her job. Very good. The Zarathans were about to learn just how good she was. "They think we will come from the front," Karen said. "They think we will ask them to let us through. They think we will negotiate. They have no idea we are behind them." Jacob allowed himself a small smile. The Zarathans always fought the same way. They would form a big group of ships and wait for the enemy to attack. Then they would use their shields and powerful weapons to win. It worked against every other race in the galaxy, but humans were different. Humans did not fight fair. Humans fought to win. "Lisa, send a message to all ship captains," Jacob said. "Tell them Operation Thunderfall is about to begin. Every captain should review their targets one more time. I do not want any mistakes." Lisa pressed buttons on her console and sent the message. All across the human fleet, captains received the order. They checked their weapons. They reviewed their battle plans. They made sure their crews were ready. Some captains said prayers. Others gave speeches to encourage their people. But all of them prepared to fight. Jacob thought about his daughter Claire. She had been a scientist on one of the colonies that the Zarathans destroyed. She was studying plants and trying to help farmers grow better crops. Then the Zarathan ships came. They fired their weapons and turned the entire planet into a wasteland. Claire died along with everyone else. The Zarathans never even asked them to surrender. They just killed everyone. That was 4 months ago. Since then, Jacob had been planning this battle. He studied every piece of information about the Zarathan military. He learned about their weapons, their tactics, their ships. He discovered that their shields were very good against energy weapons like lasers and plasma guns. But their shields were not as good against solid objects moving very fast. So Jacob made a decision. The human fleet would use railguns. These weapons fired pieces of metal at incredible speeds. When a piece of metal moving that fast hit something, it released enormous energy. The Zarathans had never fought an enemy that used railguns as their main weapon. They were about to learn a hard lesson. "Admiral, we are receiving the final authorization from Earth," Lisa announced. "Fleet Command has approved Operation Thunderfall. You may begin the attack whenever you are ready." Jacob took a deep breath. He looked around the bridge at his crew. These people trusted him. They would follow his orders even if it meant they would die. That was a heavy responsibility. Jacob had learned long ago that being a commander meant making hard choices. Sometimes those choices cost lives, but if he did not make them, even more people would die. "All ships," Jacob said into the communication system. His voice was transmitted to every ship in the fleet. "This is Admiral Hayes. In a few moments, we will attack the Zarathan fleet. They have killed millions of our people. They have destroyed our colonies. They have shown us no mercy. So we will show them none. We will destroy every ship they have in this system. We will make them understand that humanity is not weak. We will make them regret the day they decided to make war against Earth." Jacob paused. On every ship, crews listened to his words. Some were scared. Some were angry. All of them were ready. "Remember your training," Jacob continued. "Trust your fellow crew members, follow your orders, and most importantly, remember why we are here. We are here to save 3 million people on New Arizona. We are here to avenge the colonies we lost. We are here to show the galaxy that humans will defend their own. Now let's go to work. Execute Operation Thunderfall." The human fleet burst from behind the asteroid field like a swarm of angry wasps. 216 capital ships accelerated toward the Zarathan formation. Their railguns were already charging, preparing to fire. Behind them came the frigates and support craft, ready to join the battle. On the Eternal Dominion, alarms started screaming. Vexithara stared at his screens in confusion. Where did all these ships come from? How did the humans get so close without being detected? He opened his mouth to give orders, but he was too slow. The humans were already firing. The first shots from the human fleet crossed the distance between the two forces in seconds. Pieces of tungsten metal, each one accelerated to nearly the speed of light, slammed into the Zarathan ships. The impacts were devastating. Ships that had ruled space for centuries were suddenly torn apart like paper in a storm. Commander Vexithara watched in horror as 3 of his heavy cruisers simply exploded. One moment they were there, the next moment they were nothing but expanding clouds of debris. His crystalline face changed colors rapidly, showing his panic and confusion. "All ships, defensive formation!" Vexithara shouted. "Raise shields to maximum! Return fire immediately!" But the Zarathan response was too slow. Their military had not fought a real war in decades. They had grown soft from easy victories. Their communication systems required every order to go through multiple officers before being executed. This delay, which seemed minor in peacetime, was fatal in battle. The human fleet did not slow down. More railgun shots poured into the Zarathan formation. Each human capital ship had 6 main guns, and each gun could fire once every 3 seconds. The math was simple and terrible. 216 ships with 6 guns each meant nearly 1,300 shots every 3 seconds. The Zarathans had never experienced such concentrated firepower. Captain Danny Price commanded the battleship CNS Vengeance. He was a big man with a thick beard and a loud voice. Right now, he was shouting orders to his crew as fast as he could think of them. Gun crews, continuous fire. Do not stop shooting until I tell you to stop. Target their command ships first. I want their admirals dead before they figure out what is happening. The Vengeance shook as its main guns fired again and again. On the screens, Danny watched as his shots hit a Zarathan flagship. The first shot punched through the shield. The second shot hit the hull. The third, fourth, and fifth shots tore the ship apart from the inside. Danny felt no joy at the destruction. He had a job to do, and he was going to do it well. Lieutenant Sarah Blake sat in the fighter control room aboard the carrier CNS Liberty. In front of her were screens showing hundreds of small dots. Each dot was a human fighter launching from the carrier and heading toward the enemy. Sarah was responsible for coordinating all of these fighters and making sure they attacked the right targets. Echo Squadron, you are cleared for attack run. Target the point defense platforms on the enemy cruisers. Delta Squadron, follow Echo in and protect them from enemy fighters. Her voice was calm, but inside she was terrified. Sarah had been a fighter pilot herself before being promoted to command. She knew what those pilots were flying into. She knew many of them would not come back. But if she did not send them, the bombers could not get through. And if the bombers could not get through, the fleet could not win. The space between the two fleets filled with weapons fire. The Zarathans finally began to shoot back. Their particle beam weapons created brilliant lines of light across the darkness. These beams were powerful and deadly. When they hit a human ship, the armor melted like ice under a blowtorch. The frigate CNS Dakota took a direct hit from a Zarathan battleship. The beam cut through the Dakota from bow to stern, slicing the ship in half. 300 crew members died in an instant. Their sacrifice bought time for two other frigates to move into position and destroy the Zarathan battleship with a coordinated attack. Commander Karen Wells watched the battle develop from her station on the Defiance. Her screens showed the positions of every ship on both sides. She could see the patterns forming, the gaps in the enemy defense, the places where the human fleet could push through. "Admiral, the enemy formation is breaking apart," Karen reported. "They are trying to reorganize into 3 separate groups, but our attack has them confused. They cannot coordinate their defensive fire effectively." Jacob studied the tactical display. The Zarathans were doing exactly what he predicted they would do. When attacked from an unexpected direction, they would try to form smaller groups that could support each other. But this maneuver took time, and time was something the Zarathans did not have. "Order the destroyer wings to push through the gap between their second and third groups," Jacob commanded. "I want those destroyers behind the Zarathan lines before they can close the gap. Once they are through, they should attack the enemy from behind." Lisa transmitted the orders immediately. 30 human destroyers broke formation and accelerated through the opening in the Zarathan defenses. These ships were smaller and faster than the capital ships. They could not take much damage, but they did not need to. Their job was to cause chaos and confusion in the enemy rear areas. The Zarathan commander saw the destroyers coming and tried to redirect ships to block them, but it was too late. The human destroyers were already through and spreading out. They began attacking the Zarathan supply ships and support craft. These vessels had no heavy weapons and could not defend themselves. They died quickly. Captain Greg Sanders flew his fighter through a storm of enemy fire. Explosions bloomed around him like deadly flowers. His fighter shook from near misses. Alarms screamed warnings about missile locks and incoming fire. Greg ignored all of it. He had a target, and he was going to hit it. "Blue 5, stay on my wing," Greg said into his radio. "We are going after that carrier. Once we take out its launch bays, their reserve fighters cannot launch." Blue 5 was piloted by a young woman named Kelly Fritz. She had been flying fighters for only 8 months. "I am with you, Blue Leader. Locked and ready." The two fighters dove toward the Zarathan carrier. Point defense guns tracked them and fired streams of plasma. Greg jinked left and right, up and down, never flying straight for more than a second. Kelly followed his movements perfectly, staying right behind him. They were so close now. Just a few more seconds. Greg fired his missiles. 6 rockets leaped from his fighter and streaked toward the carrier. Kelly fired her missiles right after. 12 missiles hit the carrier's launch bays almost simultaneously. The explosions tore huge holes in the side of the ship. Atmosphere and debris rushed out into space. Secondary explosions followed as fuel and ammunition inside the carrier caught fire. "Target destroyed," Greg reported. "Blue Squadron, regroup and find new targets. There are plenty of enemy ships left to kill." The battle had been going on for 30 minutes, but to the people fighting it felt like hours. Human ships pressed forward relentlessly. The Zerathans fell back, trying desperately to form a stable defense line. But everywhere they turned, there were more human ships shooting at them. Lieutenant Paul Griffin monitored the sensor data from his station. His earlier fear had been replaced by intense concentration. He was too busy doing his job to be scared anymore. "Admiral, enemy casualties are at 40% and climbing. Their formation cohesion is collapsing. Multiple enemy ships are attempting to retreat toward the outer system." Jacob leaned forward in his chair. "Do not let them retreat. Any ship that tries to run should be destroyed immediately. I want them trapped here." The human fleet adjusted its formation to cut off all escape routes. The Zerathans found themselves in a killing box with no way out. Some captains tried to surrender. They broadcast messages asking for mercy and offering to power down their weapons. These messages were ignored. The human fleet kept shooting. Commander Vexithara realized with growing horror that the humans were not interested in accepting surrender. In all his years of military service, he had never encountered an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. Every race in the galaxy had agreed to certain standards. Prisoners were taken, surrender was accepted, mercy was shown to defeated enemies. But the humans were not following these rules. They were killing every Zerathan ship they could reach, whether those ships fought back or tried to surrender. It was brutal and efficient. Vexithara finally understood that this was not just a battle, this was extermination. On the planet below, the human colonists heard the sounds of battle in space. They could see the flashes of explosions through their telescopes. They did not know exactly what was happening, but they knew that someone was fighting the Zerathans. They dared to hope that rescue had finally arrived. The battle continued to rage across the orbit of New Arizona, and the Zerathan fleet continued to die. 3 hours had passed since the battle began. The space around New Arizona was filled with wreckage. Thousands of destroyed ships drifted in the darkness. Most of them were Zerathan vessels. The proud fleet that had blockaded the planet was now reduced to less than half its original strength. Commander Vexithara sat in his command chair aboard a smaller cruiser. His flagship, the Eternal Dominion, had been destroyed an hour ago. He barely escaped in a shuttle before the ship exploded. Now he commanded what was left of the Zerathan forces, and what was left was not much. His screens showed the tactical situation, and it was hopeless. The human fleet surrounded his remaining ships on all sides. Every time the Zerathans tried to form a defensive position, the humans would attack from a different direction. It was like fighting shadows. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. "Sir, we have lost 60% of our ships," his tactical officer reported. The young Zerathan's voice was shaking. "We cannot hold our formation. We cannot win this battle. We must retreat or surrender." Vexithara knew the officer was right. Pride and honor meant nothing if everyone was dead. He had to save what he could of his fleet and his crew. He opened a communication channel to broadcast on all frequencies. "Human fleet, this is Commander Vexithara of the Zerathan Imperial Navy. We surrender. I repeat, we surrender. In accordance with the Galactic Concordat, I formally offer the surrender of all Zerathan forces in this system. We will power down our weapons and await your instructions." On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Jacob Hayes heard the surrender message. He looked at the communication screen for a long moment. His face showed no emotion. Then he reached forward and muted the channel. "All ships, continue firing," Jacob said calmly. "Destroy every Zarathan ship in this system. Leave nothing operational." Lieutenant Paul Griffin looked up from his station. His young face showed confusion and concern. "Sir, they are surrendering. The Galactic Concordat requires us to accept their surrender and take prisoners. If we do not, we will be violating galactic law." Jacob turned to face the young lieutenant. His eyes were cold and hard. "The Concordat is an agreement between civilized races. The Zarathans destroyed 17 of our colonies. They killed millions of human beings. They showed no mercy when they burned our worlds. They do not deserve mercy now." "But, sir," Paul protested, "if we ignore the Concordat, the other races will see us as barbarians. They will turn against us." Jacob stood up from his chair and walked over to Paul's station. He spoke quietly so that only Paul could hear. "Lieutenant, my daughter was on New Dublin when the Zarathans attacked. She was 26 years old. She was a scientist, not a soldier. The Zarathans did not give her a chance to surrender. They just fired their weapons and killed everyone. 3 million people died on New Dublin alone. So no, Lieutenant, we will not be accepting their surrender. We will be sending a message to every race in the galaxy. The message is simple. If you attack humanity, we will destroy you completely. Now carry out your orders." Paul looked into the Admiral's eyes and saw no room for argument. He turned back to his station and continued his work. Around the bridge, the other officers heard the exchange. No one said anything. They all knew people who had died in the Zarathan attacks. They all understood why Jacob was doing what he was doing, even if they were not sure it was right. Captain Danny Price heard the surrender broadcast on his ship. He also heard Admiral Hayes refuse it. Danny felt a weight settle on his shoulders. He had fought in many battles, but he had never been ordered to kill an enemy that was trying to surrender. It went against everything he had been taught at the academy. But Danny also remembered his brother, who had been living on one of the destroyed colonies. His brother's wife and 2 young children had died with him. When Danny thought about his niece and nephew, the weight on his shoulders felt lighter. He gave the order for his ship to keep firing. The Vengeance's guns continued their deadly work. Railgun shots tore through Zarathan ships that had powered down their weapons. Some of the Zarathan crews tried to bring their shields back online, but it was too late. They died confused and afraid, not understanding why the humans would not accept their surrender. Lieutenant Sarah Blake coordinated the fighter wings as they hunted down fleeing Zarathan vessels. Some of the enemy ships were trying to reach the hyperspace jump points at the edge of the system. But human destroyers had already positioned themselves at every possible escape route. It was a perfect trap. "All squadrons, pursue and destroy any ships attempting to flee," Sarah ordered. "Do not let anyone escape to report back to the Zarathan Empire." Her fighters spread out across the system, hunting their prey. Sarah watched the screens as one by one, the escaping ships were caught and destroyed. She felt sick to her stomach but kept giving orders. She had a job to do. Commander Karen Wells tracked the battle from her tactical station. She noted with professional interest how efficiently the human fleet was executing the operation. Every ship knew its role. Every captain followed orders perfectly. It was a masterpiece of military coordination. It was also a massacre. "Admiral, the Zarathans are no longer offering any organized resistance," Karen reported. "Some individual ships are still fighting, but most have stopped and are just waiting. Our casualties remain relatively light. 53 ships lost or heavily damaged. Approximately 15,000 dead or wounded." Jacob nodded. "Order all bombers to target the larger Zarathan vessels. I want their capital ships eliminated first. The smaller ships can wait." Across the fleet, bomber squadrons received their orders and moved into attack positions. These were heavy fighters carrying powerful missiles designed to crack open the thick armor of capital ships. The pilots armed their weapons and selected their targets. Captain Helen Brooks commanded the battleship CNS Retribution. She was a veteran officer, 51 years old, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Right now, those eyes were watching a problem develop on her screens. Sensors. What is that energy signature coming from the Zarathan command ship? Helen asked. Her sensor officer studied the readings carefully. His face went pale. Captain, it is a planet cracker weapon. They are powering it up. Target appears to be New Arizona. Helen felt her blood turn cold. A planet cracker was exactly what it sounded like. It was a weapon designed to destroy entire worlds. The Zarathans were planning to destroy New Arizona rather than let the humans reclaim it. Millions of colonists would die. How long until they can fire? Helen demanded. 4 minutes, maybe less. Helen immediately opened a channel to the Defiance. Admiral Hayes, this is the Retribution. The Zarathan command ship is preparing to fire a planet cracker at New Arizona. We have less than 4 minutes to stop them. On the Defiance, Jacob felt a surge of rage. The Zarathans were defeated, but they wanted to kill as many humans as possible before they died. He looked at the tactical display, calculating distances and firing solutions. The Zarathan command ship still had full shields. It would take sustained bombardment from multiple ships to break through those shields, and they did not have enough time. But there was another option, a terrible option that Jacob did not want to take. He looked at the display showing the position of the Retribution. The ship was old, with a damaged reactor that the engineers had been struggling to keep stable. If that reactor was pushed to maximum output and then overloaded, the resulting explosion would be powerful enough to destroy anything nearby. Jacob opened a private channel to Captain Brooks. Helen, you are the closest ship that can reach the command ship in time, but you cannot do it with weapons. You need to ram them. There was a pause on the other end of the channel. Then Helen's calm voice replied, Understood, Admiral. It has been an honor serving with you. The honor was mine, Captain. Give them hell. Helen closed the channel and turned to her crew. Listen up, everyone. We have one job left to do, and we do not have much time. We are going to ram that command ship and stop them from destroying the planet. I want everyone except essential bridge crew to get to the escape pods now. Her crew stared at her in shock. They understood what she was saying. This was a suicide mission. But they also understood why it had to be done. The crew members began moving quickly, heading for the escape pods. Some of them stopped to shake Helen's hand or salute her. She returned their salutes with pride. Within 2 minutes, most of the crew had evacuated. Only Helen and a handful of officers remained on the bridge. They sat at their stations, hands on the controls, ready to carry out the final order. All power to engines and forward shields, Helen commanded. Maximum acceleration. Target the Zarathan command ship's main reactor section. Helm, take us in. The Retribution turned and accelerated toward the enemy command ship. The ship's damaged reactor screamed in protest as power levels climbed far beyond safe limits. Alarms blared throughout the empty corridors. The ship shook violently as it picked up speed. The Zarathan command ship saw the Retribution coming and opened fire with every weapon it had. Particle beams hammered against the battleship's shields. The shields absorbed the damage but were rapidly weakening. Helen gripped the arms of her chair and watched the distance close. 1 kilometer, 500 meters, 200 meters. The Retribution struck the Zarathan command ship like a hammer hitting glass. The battleship's armored bow drove deep into the enemy vessel, penetrating through shields and hull. Both ships' reactors overloaded simultaneously, releasing all their stored energy in a fraction of a second. The explosion was visible across the entire star system. For a brief moment, a second sun appeared in the orbit of New Arizona. When the light faded, both ships were gone, replaced by an expanding sphere of superheated gas and debris. On the Defiance, the bridge crew stood in silence for a moment, honoring Captain Brooks and her sacrifice. Then Jacob's voice cut through the quiet. "She bought us the planet. Do not waste her gift. All ships, continue the attack." With their command ship destroyed and their formation completely broken, the remaining Zarathan ships scattered across the system. Some tried to fight, others tried to run. Most simply drifted in space, their crews too shocked and demoralized to do anything. The human fleet pursued them all with cold efficiency. This was no longer a battle. It was a hunt, and the Zarathans were the prey. Commander Vexithara sat alone in the darkened bridge of his cruiser. Half his crew was dead. Most of his systems were offline. His shields were failing. He knew he would be dead within minutes. The humans were coming, and nothing could stop them. He thought about his long career in the Zarathan military. He had served the Empire for 40 years. He had conquered worlds and defeated enemies. He had always believed the Empire was invincible, that their superior technology and ancient wisdom made them unbeatable. Now he knew the truth. The Empire had grown weak from easy victories. They had forgotten that real war was brutal and unforgiving. The humans had not forgotten. Perhaps they never knew anything else. An explosion rocked the cruiser as another railgun shot tore through the hull. Vexithara did not flinch. He was beyond fear now. He only hoped that his death would teach the Empire a valuable lesson. Never underestimate humanity again. A final shot penetrated the bridge, and Commander Vexithara's war was over. Captain Danny Price watched the destruction of the Zarathan cruiser on his screens. He felt no satisfaction, no joy. He only felt tired. His ship had been fighting for over 4 hours now. His crew was exhausted. But the orders were clear. Keep fighting until every enemy ship was destroyed. "Captain, we are receiving reports of Zarathan escape pods in Sector 7, his tactical officer reported. "Should we dispatch rescue teams?" Danny remembered Admiral Hayes's orders. No survivors, except for intelligence purposes. He knew what he had to do, but he hated having to do it. "Negative. Send fighter squadrons to destroy the escape pods. We cannot allow any Zarathans to report back about our tactics or capabilities." The tactical officer hesitated. "Sir, those are escape pods. The crews inside are not armed. They cannot fight back." Danny turned to look at his officer. He saw the doubt and discomfort on the young man's face. Danny understood. He felt the same way. But orders were orders. "I am aware of that, Lieutenant. Carry out my orders. That is all." The tactical officer reluctantly sent the command. Human fighters moved through the debris field, targeting the small Zarathan escape pods with their weapons. The pods had no shields, no armor. They were destroyed easily. Inside each pod, Zarathan crew members died, still hoping for rescue that would never come. Lieutenant Sarah Blake coordinated the fighter operations from her station aboard the Liberty. She watched the screens as her squadrons eliminated the escape pods one by one. Each time a pod was destroyed, she felt a small piece of herself die with it. This was not what she had imagined when she joined the military. She had wanted to explore space, to see new worlds, to meet alien races. She had wanted adventure and excitement. She had not wanted to become a killer of helpless survivors. But she kept doing her job because that was what soldiers did. They followed orders even when those orders made them sick to their stomachs. They did terrible things so that the people back home could sleep safely at night. Sarah wondered if she would ever sleep well again after this battle. "All squadrons report sectors clear," Sarah said in a flat, emotionless voice. "No Zarathan survivors detected in our operational area." Across the fleet, similar scenes played out again and again. Human ships hunted down every Zarathan vessel, no matter how small or damaged. Escape pods were destroyed. Disabled ships were finished off with precision fire. The human fleet showed no mercy, because mercy was something they could no longer afford. Admiral Jacob Hayes monitored the progress of the operation from his command chair. He saw the reports coming in, sector after sector cleared of enemy ships, thousands of Zerathans killed. The numbers were staggering, but Jacob felt nothing. He had shut down his emotions hours ago. Right now, he was not a man. He was a weapon pointed at the Zerathan Empire. Captain Lisa Morgan stood next to him, quietly handling the coordination of the fleet. She had not spoken much since the battle began. She was good at her job, following Jacob's orders with efficiency and precision. But Jacob could see the strain on her face. This was taking a toll on all of them. "Lisa, how much longer?" Jacob asked quietly. "Another 2 hours at current pace," Lisa replied. "We have destroyed approximately 92% of the Zerathan fleet. The remaining ships are scattered and offering minimal resistance." Jacob nodded. "Good. Make sure our ships are capturing any intact technology we can find. Intelligence will want to study their equipment, especially their shield generators and weapons systems." "Already being done, Admiral. Marine boarding teams are securing several disabled Zerathan cruisers. We should have plenty of material for intelligence to analyze." The boarding operations were dangerous work. Even though the Zerathan ships were disabled, there might still be crew members alive inside. The human Marines approached each vessel carefully, weapons ready, expecting resistance. Most of the time, they found only bodies and damaged equipment. Occasionally, they found survivors. Sergeant Kevin Ross led his Marine squad through the dark corridors of a Zerathan heavy cruiser. Their armor suits provided light, cutting through the darkness like knives. The ship had no power, no gravity, no life support. It was a tomb floating in space. "Stay alert," Kevin said to his squad. "We are looking for computer cores and any surviving crew. Remember, orders are to capture if possible, but do not take chances. If they resist, put them down." The Marines moved through the ship with practiced efficiency. They had trained for boarding operations like this for years. They knew how to move in zero gravity, how to navigate unfamiliar ships, how to identify threats. They were the best at what they did. Kevin's suit sensors detected movement ahead. He held up his hand and his squad stopped instantly. They raised their weapons and aimed at the corridor ahead. A figure floated into view. It was a Zerathan crew member, injured and unarmed. The alien's crystalline body was cracked in several places. It was clearly dying. The Zerathan saw the Marines and tried to speak, but Kevin could not understand the language. The alien seemed to be pleading for help. Kevin looked at the dying creature for a long moment. Then he raised his weapon and fired once. The Zerathan's body went still. "Keep moving," Kevin said coldly. "We have a lot of ship left to search." His squad followed him deeper into the vessel without comment. They had all seen death before. One more body did not matter. What mattered was completing their mission and getting back to their own ship safely. Commander Karen Wells reviewed the tactical situation from her station. The battle was essentially over. The Zerathans had been completely defeated. What remained now was just cleanup work. But even cleanup took time and effort. "Admiral, we are detecting a small group of Zerathan ships attempting to reach a hyperspace jump point in Sector 12, Karen reported. "They appear to be damaged but still mobile. Estimated time to jump point is 40 minutes. Jacob studied the display. "How many ships are in that group?" 8 vessels, mostly frigates and support craft, nothing larger than a light cruiser. "Send a destroyer squadron to intercept. I want those ships destroyed before they can jump out of the system." Karen transmitted the orders. 6 human destroyers broke formation and accelerated toward the fleeing Zerathan ships. The race was on. If the Zerathans could reach the jump point, they might escape. If the humans could catch them first, they would die like all the others. The destroyer squadron was commanded by Captain Steve Coleman. He was a young officer, only 32 years old, but he had proven himself capable in previous engagements. Now he had a chance to show what his ships could do. "All ships, maximum acceleration," Steve ordered. "We need to catch them before they jump. Weapons free. Fire as soon as you are in range." The destroyers pushed their engines to the limit. The distance between them and the Zarathan ships slowly decreased. 30,000 kilometers, 20,000, 10,000. Finally, the destroyers were close enough to fire. Railgun shots reached out across the darkness. The first shots missed, but the gunners quickly corrected their aim. The next volley hit one of the Zarathan frigates, punching through its rear shields and destroying its engines. The ship tumbled out of control, unable to continue its flight. One by one, the fleeing Zarathan ships were caught and destroyed. They tried to fight back, but their weapons were no match for the destroyers' superior speed and firepower. Within 20 minutes, all 8 ships were nothing but debris. "Sector 12 clear," Steve reported back to the Defiance. "All enemy vessels eliminated. No survivors." Jacob acknowledged the report and moved on to the next task. There was still work to be done. The system had to be completely cleared of enemy forces. Every ship had to be accounted for. Every piece of enemy technology had to be secured or destroyed. It was tedious work, but it was necessary. 6 hours after the battle began, Lieutenant Paul Griffin made the final report. "Admiral, all sectors clear. No Zarathan ships remain operational in the new Arizona system. We have complete control of orbital space." Jacob allowed himself to relax slightly. The battle was over. Humanity had won. But as he looked at the casualty reports and saw the numbers of dead on both sides, he wondered what the cost of victory had really been. 2 days after the battle ended, the first human ships descended through the atmosphere of New Arizona. The colonists emerged from their underground shelters to see their rescuers arriving. Crowds gathered in the cities, cheering and crying with relief. 3 million people had been saved from certain death. Admiral Jacob Hayes stood on the landing pad of the capital city, watching the celebration around him. Children waved flags. Adults sang songs. Everyone wanted to shake his hand and thank him for saving their world. Jacob smiled and shook hands and said the right words, but inside he felt hollow. Captain Lisa Morgan stood beside him, also accepting the gratitude of the colonists. She understood how Jacob felt. They had saved these people, yes, but at what cost? The human fleet had lost 53 ships and over 15,000 crew members. The Zarathans had lost everything. 12,000 ships destroyed. Millions of crew members dead. It was the largest space battle in galactic history, and it had been a massacre. "The governor wants to hold a ceremony in your honor tomorrow," Lisa said quietly. "They are calling you the savior of New Arizona. There will be speeches and medals and probably a statue." Jacob grimaced. "I am not a savior. I am just a soldier who did his job. Tell the governor I will attend his ceremony, but keep it short. We need to get the fleet back to Earth. This war is not over yet." Lisa nodded and went to make the arrangements. Jacob walked away from the crowd and found a quiet spot overlooking the city. From here, he could see the damage the Zarathan bombardment had caused. Entire neighborhoods were destroyed. Thousands of buildings were nothing but rubble. The colonists would be rebuilding for years, but they were alive. That was what mattered. Jacob had saved them, even if the method he used would haunt him for the rest of his life. Lieutenant Paul Griffin found Jacob standing alone and approached carefully. The young officer had been quiet since the battle ended. He had followed his orders and done his duty, but Jacob could see the doubt in his eyes. "Admiral, may I speak with you privately?" Paul asked. "Of course, Lieutenant. What is on your mind?" Paul hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Sir, I have been thinking about the battle. About our refusal to accept the Zarathan surrender, about the escape pods we destroyed. I understand why you gave those orders. I understand we were sending a message, but I am not sure I can accept that what we did was right." Jacob turned to face the young officer. He saw himself in Paul, the idealistic young man who believed in honor and rules and doing things the right way. War had a way of destroying that idealism. "You are right to question it, Paul," Jacob said quietly. The moment a soldier stops questioning his orders is the moment he stops being human and becomes just a weapon. I gave those orders knowing they would cost lives and break laws. I gave them because I believed they were necessary to protect humanity, but that does not make them right. It just makes them my responsibility. Will there be consequences? Paul asked. The other races in the galaxy must know by now what we did here. They will demand answers. Yes, there will be consequences. Some of our allies are already calling for my trial. The Galactic Senate is holding emergency sessions to discuss humanity's actions. Earth's government is debating whether to defend me or sacrifice me to maintain diplomatic relations. Jacob smiled sadly. But none of that matters. What matters is that the Zarathan Empire now understands that humanity cannot be conquered. They will think twice before attacking our colonies again. And so will every other race that was considering making war on Earth. Paul thought about this for a moment. Was it worth it, sir? All those deaths? Both ours and theirs? Jacob looked out over the damaged city. Ask these colonists if it was worth it, Lieutenant. Ask the families who would have died if we had not come. They will tell you it was worth every life we took. But ask me again in 20 years, after the nightmares have had time to settle in, and I might give you a different answer. Paul saluted and walked away, leaving Jacob alone with his thoughts. The political fallout from the Battle of New Arizona began almost immediately. The Zarathan Empire, shocked by the total destruction of their fleet, recalled all their military forces and requested an immediate ceasefire. They offered to return all conquered human territories and pay reparations. The Empire's leaders understood they had made a terrible mistake in attacking humanity. Other alien races watched these developments with a mixture of respect and fear. Humanity had proven itself capable of extreme violence when threatened. Some races saw this as a strength and sought closer alliances with Earth. Others saw it as a danger and began planning how to contain human expansion before it became a threat to everyone. The Galactic Senate held debates about whether humanity should be censured for violating the Concordat. Some senators argued that humans were too dangerous to be trusted with advanced weapons. Others pointed out that the Zarathans had started the war and humanity had only defended itself. The debates went on for weeks with no clear resolution. On Earth, Admiral Jacob Hayes was promoted to Fleet Admiral and given command of all human military forces in space. The promotion came with praise from the government and criticism from those who believed his methods had been too brutal. Jacob accepted the promotion without comment and immediately began preparing the fleet for the possibility of future conflicts. Captain Lisa Morgan was promoted to Admiral and given command of the Defiance. She understood the burden Jacob carried and made sure he had someone he could talk to about the moral weight of their decisions. They spent many evenings in quiet conversation, trying to make sense of what they had done and what it meant for humanity's future. Lieutenant Paul Griffin continued to serve under Jacob, slowly coming to terms with the reality of modern warfare. He learned that war was not about heroism or honor. It was about making hard choices and living with the consequences. The human fleet remained on patrol in the outer sectors, a constant reminder to potential enemies of what would happen if they threatened Earth's colonies. The crews of these ships became legends, their efficiency and ruthlessness studied at military academies across human space. 6 months after the battle, Jacob received a message from the Zarathan Empire. It was from a high-ranking official, requesting permission to visit Earth and speak with him directly. Jacob agreed, curious about what the Zarathans wanted to say. The Zarathan official was an old being named Tharkan. His crystalline body was covered in markings that indicated great age and wisdom. He met Jacob in a private conference room, away from cameras and recording devices. "Admiral Hayes," Tharkan said through a translator, "I have come to tell you that the Empire has learned from our defeat. We underestimated humanity. We believed you were weak because you were new to the stars. We were wrong. Jacob nodded. Your empire attacked us without provocation. You destroyed our colonies and killed millions of our people. What did you expect us to do? We expected you to negotiate, Tharkan replied. Every other race we have conquered has chosen to talk rather than fight. We believed all civilized beings valued life above military victory. But humans do not think like other races. You do not value individual lives as much as you value the survival of your species as a whole. You are willing to sacrifice anything to protect your people. Jacob considered this. Is that why you came here? To tell me we are different? No, Tharkan said. I came to warn you. Other races are watching humanity now. They see your military power and they are afraid. Fear can lead to many things, Admiral. It can lead to respect, but it can also lead to aggression. There are races in this galaxy far more powerful than the Zarathan Empire. If they decide humanity is a threat, they will act to eliminate that threat before you become too strong. Jacob felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying we made enemies by winning too decisively? I am saying you have changed the balance of power in this part of the galaxy. That change will have consequences. Some good, some bad. The Empire will honor our treaty with humanity. We will not attack you again, but I cannot speak for the others. Tharkan stood to leave. At the door he paused and turned back to Jacob. One more thing, Admiral. In our culture, we have a saying, the strongest warrior is not the one who wins every battle, but the one who knows when not to fight. Remember that in the years to come. After the Zarathan official left, Jacob sat alone in the conference room for a long time. He thought about the battle, about the choices he had made, about the future of humanity in a galaxy full of potential enemies. He had saved New Arizona and sent a message to anyone who would threaten Earth. But Tharkan was right. That message had consequences. Jacob looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there were races with technology and weapons that made the Zarathans look primitive. If those races decided humanity was a threat, could Earth survive another war? And if they did survive, what would they have to become to win? He did not have answers to these questions. All he could do was prepare the fleet, train the crews, and hope that humanity's demonstration of force at New Arizona would be enough to keep the peace. But in his heart, Jacob knew that peace was temporary. Another war was coming. It was just a matter of time. The stars did not care about human hopes or fears. They just hung in the darkness, silent and eternal, waiting to see what humanity would do next. The age of Earth had begun, written in the wreckage of enemy fleets and the determination of those willing to do whatever was necessary to protect their home. Admiral Jacob Hayes returned to his duties, carrying the weight of 15,000 human deaths and millions of Zarathan deaths on his shoulders. He had saved 3 million colonists and secured Earth's position in the galaxy. History would judge whether the price had been worth paying. For now, all he could do was keep moving forward, keep preparing, keep protecting his people. Because that was what soldiers did. They bore the burden so others could live in peace. They made the hard choices so others would not have to. They became what was necessary, even if it cost them their souls. The human fleet remained vigilant, watching the stars for the next threat. And when that threat came, they would be ready to fight again, to kill again, to do whatever it took to ensure humanity's survival. That was the promise Jacob had made, and it was a promise he would keep until the day he died.